everybody give me a thumbs up or hand, wave your hand or something, depending upon what social media platform you're on. Let me know my audio is good, and I will keep it moving. I'll keep it moving. And be sure to share this with 5 people that you think this will benefit from. Thank you, Brian, for letting me know. Welcome to LinkedIn Audio. Richard Exuberance is just joined us on IG Live. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is our 3rd session of the Think Like a Monk book discussion. Jay Shetty is an incredible author and my mentor virtually through the Genius community. I've learned a ton over the last 3 or 4 years from him. Released this book a couple years ago and actually has another book about to come out. I'm not sure exactly what it's about, but I heard that today. He's got another book that's about to come out, so I'm excited about that. He's also got a podcast called On Purpose that you can listen to on all platforms, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, wherever you listen to your podcasts, you can listen. Let me mute. I got some feedback on Twitter Spaces. Okay, perfect. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can listen to the On Purpose podcast by Jay Shetty. Incredible speaker. I guess he's also an influencer, content creator, podcaster. Now probably a national bestseller author, and has another book coming out soon. So his book, Think Like a Monk, is his first book. It was based upon his time in part in monastery, I think in his early 20s. And then he decided to share what he learned and how he applies it into his everyday life. He's no longer a monk. So we covered the first 2 sections of the book. And just for a quick recap on the first 2 sections of the book, and I'll give you the first section was about identity, right? So more about you. Chapter 1 was identity. Chapter 2 was negativity. Just scrolling through my notes. Chapter 3 was all about fear, one of my favorite chapters. Chapter 4 was about intention. We got into purpose in chapter 5, which was an incredible conversation last week. Chapter 6 was routine. And then we finished it off with ego. We finished it off with ego, which was an incredible chapter to dig into. I've literally been studying a lot about the mind and about just how our brains work. That feeds then our emotions, which then feeds, how we react and how we respond to certain things. I've done a lot of studying about that since about 2018, and it's such fascinating information to help me personally. I hope it helps you too, but for me personally, it's helped me to be better in relationship with, my siblings, my friends, my parent, my friends, you name it. It's really helped just understanding myself better and how the ego actually works. So if you haven't read the book, it's okay. Trust me, you'll still get a lot out of this tonight. If you haven't read the book, you'll still get a lot out of this tonight. But it's written in such a way that you can really take a chapter at a time and revisit it. Because that's basically what I've done to prepare for this discussion. Is I've just kind of gone back and picked apart different pieces. And I've gotten new revelation every time I've picked up a portion of the book and found something else to chew on. And it's been amazing. So you can pick up the book. And if there's a particular topic that you just want to dig into, you can go straight to that topic and you won't feel fully lost. So it's that type of book as well. So I wanted to make sure I said that as well. So with that being said, tonight I initially said I was going to cover the entire part 3 section, which included gratitude, relationships, and a few others. But as I was preparing, I realized that chapter on relationships was intense. It was really intense, and I said, I don't know if we have enough time, because I like to be punctual in this space. I'm not always punctual in my regular life. Please understand, I'm not going to fake it out here. But I like to be punctual in this space, especially since it's the evening. Most of us have family that we want to attend to, so I appreciate you joining us. So I like to keep it punctual, and I didn't want to just glaze over that relationships chapter because there was so much good information in there. So we're going to cover chapter 9, which is gratitude, and chapter 10, relationships. And that last section, the last chapter in that section, we'll cover next week, along with a little bit of kind of tell me what you all thought. So we'll do that next Thursday. But I just wanted to do this chapter on relationships. I wanted to do it. It's just, right? So again, the name of the book for everyone that I see a few people joined on Facebook, a few more people joined on Facebook, a few more people joined on IG. The name of the book, if you haven't been attending the previous sessions, the name of the book is Think Like a Monk by Shetty. By Shetty. So the first thing I want to get into, let me flip over to these notes, is around gratitude. This chapter is all about gratitude. At the very beginning of this chapter, he mentions the world's most powerful drug is gratitude. Now I listened to the book on Audible, so when you hear him say this quote, he puts some extra emphasis on the world's most powerful drug, and he's got a phenomenal voice. He's a great orator. So when he said it, I was like, the world's most powerful drug. It was kind of like jarring, because you're sitting there like, drug? Gratitude's not a drug. But he goes on to explain. He cites a ton of different authors and different research that he did as he was writing this book. But I want that to sit with you as we go through the rest of this chapter, that this could truly be the most powerful drug for you. Gratitude. It could truly be a drug for you. A good one at that. So one of the things he says is appreciate everything, even the ordinary, and especially the ordinary. Most of the entire book up until this point was really focused inward. Most of the entire book was really focused inward, and this is actually when he begins to look outward from this point forward. He suggests gratitude journaling can reduce stress levels and intrusive thoughts, right? Intrusive, in most cases for us, can be interrupters, disruptors, negative thoughts, intrusive thoughts. He suggests gratitude journaling. 15 minutes before bed, what are you grateful for? Well, I can tell you, this past week, I've spent a lot of time every morning, the first 5 or 10 minutes, I simply have been grateful that my AC is working when I wake up in the morning. It could really be that simple. It could really be that simple. My AC was working. Y'all can laugh if you want. You can drop a little laughing emoji. And I even mentioned it to a friend of mine when I was on the phone earlier. The AC in the car is working. The AC in the house is working. It's a great day. Being grateful for something as simple as that, and I think he mentioned when we were talking, you can take it for granted. But there's people I know. I have a friend I was trying to help out earlier. She's gonna need probably some Freon in her AC. I was like, yeah, it's hot out here, and you're gonna need to get that Freon put in or get it checked, whatever, because it's really tough to survive. So it could be as simple as having gratitude for your AC, or it can be as big as, you got a new job, getting married. Some people might be celebrating a divorce. I don't know. I'm not speaking that over you, but whatever that might be, what are you grateful for? What are some of the small things as well as some of the big things that you take for granted on a day-to-day basis, right? He also talked a little bit about sleep, right? And why it's so important to do the journaling sometimes at night, as well as having those conversations with yourself in the morning about what you're grateful for. By doing some of that in the evening, it can set the tone in your subconscious mind for your sleep, as well as how you wake up the next day, right? As well as how you wake up the next day. So if you're not sleeping well, if you're a little restless when it comes to sleep, this might be something you want to practice, is gratitude in the evening, thinking about what you're grateful for, and that's where your mind will rest throughout the night, and you'll wake up with a different kind of renewed energy. He also mentioned, if you're present, right? If you're present in gratitude, you cannot be anywhere else. So it becomes contagious. For example, as I was thinking about when I was saying I was excited this morning about my AC working, right? Because you can wake up and that fan might not be running. I've been there, I've done that, and it hurts your chest, right? If you're a homeowner, if that AC, because it's like, number one, you got to get someone out in the middle of the summer. I'm in New Orleans. Every AC person is busy around the clock dang near. So you got to get someone out. That might take a little bit. Maybe they don't get here timely. You don't want to let JoJo and them fool with the AC unit, so I can't really call in no favors. You know how it is, right? But even in that, if you're present in gratitude, it's extremely difficult to think about anything else. You can't be anywhere else if you're in gratitude. You can't necessarily think about the negative if you're present and you're grateful. Your brain immediately starts to look for more things to be grateful for when you start to think of things that you're grateful for. I'll say that again. Your brain starts to look for more things to be grateful for when you start to think of things to be grateful for. And I have a ton of things to be grateful for. I just mentioned the AC because that's one of the first thoughts I had this morning was around my AC. And then I got in the car later this afternoon. I had to bring it to the dealership to get some service done, and you know how it goes. They'll tell you more stuff is wrong, and thankfully they didn't. Just got to get a little oil change, and the brakes done, and I'm out of here. I was grateful. So it was a lot about the AC, the car, some mechanical stuff I was grateful for today because that was top of mind. That's what I was working on, but I have a ton of things to be grateful for. Drop in the comments if you're on Facebook Live or if you're on IG Live, some of the things that you're grateful for. I know we don't have that technology on LinkedIn audio yet, but Twitter Spaces, you can use your emojis, right? You can use the chat function. I think I have it on. Yep, I have the chat function on. Drop some things that you're grateful for. And if you just want to do the touchdown hands on LinkedIn audio, do the touchdown hands on LinkedIn audio and let us know that you're grateful for something. Just being present, and even in this moment, it should automatically, if you came in and maybe your energy wasn't all the way right, see someone drop their health, they're grateful for their health. I'm extremely grateful for my health. Peace, family, right? Peace and family, right? The job, right? A lot of people don't have jobs. What are you grateful for? And start thinking about that day to day. I could go on and on and on, but I don't want to, bore you all with all my gratitude. I want you to be thinking about what you're personally grateful for. We talked a little bit about dopamine, I think either in the last session or the previous session, but the dopamine reward chemical is released when you practice gratitude. It's the feel-good hormone. So it's very difficult not to smile when you think about the things that you're grateful for, right? It's very difficult not to smile, to have a little inner chuckle because you're extremely excited, extremely grateful that God's blessed you with whatever it is that you're thinking about. The last point I want to mention before we move on to the relationships chapter, which is going to be pretty heavy, and we're going to need to be, that DTT family. I'm extremely grateful for that family, my trading family, extremely grateful for them. But the last point before we move to the relationship chapter is don't judge the moment. As soon as your mind labels something in your mind as bad, you start to believe it. So we've talked about gratitude. We've talked about how important gratitude is. But here's a caution. Don't judge the moment, because as soon as your mind labels something as bad, you begin to believe it. So I'll leave you with that, and ultimately I hope that just the thought of gratitude, if this is your first time joining us, we're reading from the book called Think Like a Monk. Think Like a Monk by Shetty. I hope just those few snippets and just the feel-good hormone of dopamine was released for you today. So on to chapter 10, relationships. There are people that we love, right, that don't love us the same way in return. I was like, Jay, how are you going to start a chapter talking about me loving somebody that don't love me the same? But before I could even get all the way off into that thought, he came back and said, and there are people that love you and you don't love them the same. You don't give them the same amount of love in return. And that's how he kind of started the relationships chapter. And I was like, wow. So I wasn't quite sure when I first read the book exactly where this chapter was going. But it became clear as he kept going. So he said, if you're feeling unloved, ask yourself, who is giving to me, right? And I'm not maybe giving the same thing in return, right? Who's giving me something specific, love in an action format, but not necessarily getting anything in return from me. And then I was starting to pick up what he was putting down, right? With those first couple of statements about me loving someone and maybe they not loving me the same way back, or loving me as much as I love them back, and vice versa. Someone loving me and me not loving them with the same energy back. He says, different people serve different purposes in your life. Roles are not fixed. For example, a teacher that you may have had may one day become your student. And I've actually had that happen in my lifetime. Actually, in the workplace, a woman worked for me while I was at Walmart here in New Orleans. And then probably about 5 years later, we started working out together. She became my workout buddy. And she's probably the discipline behind our workouts. So she's leading me now, whereas I was leading her before. So those roles can change. That was the first one I thought of off the top of my head when they said teachers can become students. And that's exactly what happened. Then he moved on to talk about 4 characteristics of people in life as it relates to trust. And so as I'm going through these 4, and he always does a great job of either giving you an acronym or a very specific letter to explain something so you can always remember. And at this ripe old age of 44 going on 45, it's easier when I have an acronym or a letter to help trigger my memory. So the 4 characteristics of people in life as it relates to trust. Number 1, competent, right? Competent. So you might develop trust with someone based upon their competency. Number 2 is care, because they may think about what's best for you. That might be a parent. Number 3 is character. So we got competent, care, character. They may help us to see clearly in a situation that we're unsure of or may not believe is right or wrong, but they're trustworthy. They've got great character. So we might rely on them for their character. And number 4 is consistency. So we've got 4 C's: competent, care, character, and consistency. 4 ways to develop trust in life with people. And that obviously consistency explains itself. Reliable, present. They might be the person that's there for you during the highs, the lows, and all facets of life. As soon as I heard the word consistency, I thought of one person who's been there, man, over 20-something years. And she's definitely like the go-to. We might not talk every day. We might not see each other all the time. But she's absolutely the person that is the most consistent in my life. So if you think about those 4 things, and you might think that there's someone, right? There might be different people for each of the 4 C's for you. Maybe one person can fulfill 2 of the C's. But more often than not, as he mentioned in the book, there are very few people that can be all 4 for you at all times. And then I really understood what he was actually trying to convey in this chapter. And it's really about the expectations that we have of other people, how they treat us, how they love us, how they care for us. The bar is sometimes that we want them to be competent, care for us, be the person that we go to from a character standpoint, as well as consistency. We want it all in one person. And it's more often than not going to happen, especially not for a prolonged period of time, for them to be able to be all those things for you. Very difficult. Very difficult. But I'm sure you definitely thought of someone in each of those areas, for sure, that stood out as competent, that stood out as caring, that stood out as a high character person in your life, as well as a consistent person in your life. So what do you do with that information? Well, number 1, you can't get mad if a person can't fulfill all 4 for you. And then he goes back and puts it back on you. Are you fulfilling all 4 of those C's for someone in your life? all 4 all the time, realistically, and be honest with yourself. So are you expecting someone to do all 4 for you, and you're not even doing all 4 for someone else? It's very difficult. And the more I thought about in this chapter, this is the section that slowed me down and said, I don't know if we're going to do all 3-4 chapters tonight. We might have to save a little bit for next week. But we can't expect someone to do that for us all the time over an extended period of time. And the challenge is always to look back at ourselves to make sure that, number one, if we check ourselves, quick heat check, probably not able to do that. Probably not able to do that consistently. All 4 things: care, consistency, competence, and character. Probably not able to do all 4 for someone the entire time. It's probably very difficult. So give people grace. He also said, and he quoted, Jerry, what's the movie with Jerry Maguire? He quoted Jerry Maguire because that movie will have, thinking that someone's supposed to be your absolute everything. And he said, only you can be your everything. Only you can be your everything. Only you can be your everything. He also said you should set expectations for which seeds that person can give you. Right? They'll show you what they're capable of giving you. And if that's what they're giving you, then that's the expectation that you should have. But desiring, if someone's high character, but yet you want more consistency from them, but they're not able to provide that, you getting mad at them isn't the solve. If they can't provide it and they've basically shared that they can't provide it or acted in such a way that shows they can't provide it, but you expect it, number one, have you communicated that? I'd say that as well. Probably not. But then you're upset because they're not doing something that you want them to do. Right? And he said to use these as filters, not labels. I'll let y'all read the chapter on that because I thought those were some bars, but I'll be on here till 10 o'clock if I really dug into the filter versus label as he described it in the book. So I'll leave it to you in chapter 10 to dig into that a little bit more. He also said you have the ability to fill gaps by choosing your family in your adult life. Your family may not be able to provide all the things that you would like and desire in a family. I've definitely learned this over the years. There are certain things that I'm able to count on my family for. I have a younger sister who is the epitome of a ride-or-die sister. She is ready, guns blazing, 24/7. Honestly, I'm surprised she's not already in jail. That's just straight facts. Because she's always ready to go. I can count on her, hands down. She will take the charge over me any day. I can count on her for that. Right? And I built a family of people around me outside of my family of origin that is now my family as well to fulfill those other things that I desire. Didn't know I was doing that at the time. Sometimes may have felt a little bad about it, but I'm so happy that I did. One of them, her husband is in here tonight. She's one of those individuals. She's one of those individuals for me. But you can actually absolutely fill those gaps, and it's okay. Give yourself permission to fill those gaps. Give yourself permission to fill those gaps. So use the 4 C's as a filter. You've got character, competence, consistency, and care. Those are just some basic buckets, but I know Jay wouldn't mind me saying this. You can, create whatever acronym that you need for you personally. Whatever your heart desires, whatever way you want to be loved, you can create that and then find that and fulfill those things. But don't demand it of people that aren't able to give. Was kind of like the overarching message. Then he moved to trust. This next bit is about trust. He said, trusting everyone makes you vulnerable to deception and disappointment. Trusting everyone makes you vulnerable to deception and disappointment. but also trusting no one leaves you suspicious and alone. He always hits you with something like, oh, dang, and then he pulls you right back to the other side. It's almost like being on a pendulum when you're reading and or listening to Jay, because he's going to give you both sides of the coin more often than not and have you like, well, dang, Jay, what do you really want me to think about this? So then he goes over the different types of trust. You've got mutual trust. Somebody type that in the comments on Facebook group. If you just joined us, we're discussing the Think Like a Monk book by Shetty. There are 4 types of trust that he covers here. 1 being mutual trust, 2 being contractual trust, and it's 3. And the other one being pure trust. Mutual, contractual, and pure trust. He said if you trust people, most people trust people starting with them just being likable. These are some scientific studies that he included in the book, which I thought were really interesting. Some people will begin to trust people just because they're likable, and some even based upon their looks. But those can be huge disappointments if you begin to trust people just based upon their likability and their looks. You have contractual trust, meaning get results for what you want, count on showing up and keeping their word. So you can count on them for showing up and keeping their word. So there's some type of agreement between you all that I said I'm going to do this, you're going to do that type of situation, right? That's contractual. Then you have pure trust, when you know someone has your back no matter what. He suggests that depending upon how your relationship starts, however that relationship starts, wherever you start on the trust pyramid, don't promote people without reason. They will only let you down. Allow them to show you by their actions around trust before you promote them to believe that you might have mutual or pure trust with them. So don't promote people early. Said the biggest mistake we make as human beings is to believe everyone operates exactly like us, that everyone values what we value. So one of the examples he uses, someone says, I love you, right? If someone says, I love you, absolutely everyone on the face of the earth has a different definition about what love means to them. And that's very true, which is why they say, obviously, communication is one of the most important things in relationships. I've learned that. But everyone values things differently. Everyone believes in love in a different way based upon how they want to experience love and also probably how they love someone. So the biggest mistake is to believe that everyone operates just like you. Just like you. The mutual trust requires patience and commitment. It is built on a true understanding of that person, totally independent, totally separate from how we view the world. It's solely based upon me knowing them and how they actually view the world. Not my opinions, not my view of the world, not how I want to be loved, but truly about them and how they experience life and the world. That's when you can begin to develop mutual trust, which is why it requires so much patience, because you've got to, I'm not going to use the word die to self, but you've almost got to ignore self in order to observe someone else and their needs. He then said, when people show you their level of trust, believe them. It reminded me of that Oprah quote, I believe it was, when people show you who they are, believe them. It's kind of like a subset. When people show you their level of trust, believe them. He said, accept people for who they are and give them the space to grow and prove to be more. Let trust evolve naturally. 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 Let trust evol Trust can be threatened in small and large ways all the time. This one I hadn't really thought about because I'm a loyal person by nature, but I hadn't thought about how trust can be threatened in small ways. I've obviously experienced it in large ways, but I hadn't thought about it in small ways and how that happens over a period of time. But he did say that trust has to be rebuilt and reinforced daily. Not necessarily because something happened, but because that's what you should do to reinforce, just like you would a building with, the right pylon at the right point to make sure the building is structurally sound. You must rebuild and reinforce trust daily by making and fulfilling promises on a day-to-day basis that reinforces trust. Standing by someone who's going through something. When someone makes a mistake, how do you walk with them during that mistake without judgment? Those are just a few ways to reinforce and rebuild trust on a day-to-day basis. Then he talked a little bit more about pure trust and the right use of energy. And I would think that, we just got the grown and sexy on tonight, that many of us that are listening tonight have been in a handful of relationships, at least at this point. But if you think back to the dating, the breakups, the relationships gone bad, if you've been cheated on or cheated on someone, just the amount of energy that's been expended in relationship. If you think back to, and if you could put a total time on the amount of energy that you've expended on relationship over the course of your life, keep that in mind. I know we can't really put a number to it or a time to it, but just keep that idea in your mind. And he mentions the right use of our energy. So if you could recoup all of that time spent on failed relationships, how much time would you have? And so if you're not, currently in a committed partnership or lifelong relationship, married, if you're not there, this is for all the singles in the room, including myself, because I thought it was interesting. Your energy is squandered when you spend time tailoring yourself to someone else's idea or shaping yourself into the person that he or she wants you think he or she wants you to be, or who they actually want you to be. Your energy is squandered when you spend time tailoring yourself to someone else's idea or shaping yourself into this person's, his or hers wants, or what you think that person wants. That's the biggest give of our time and energy when we're going through the dating process. And I imagine being divorced, it's a little bit even when you're married, because you're ultimately looking to make your spouse happy versus being yourself. And then how do you guys connect from that point forward? But I am not a relationship expert. That's not me. That's why I read. I'm not a relationship expert, just basing that upon my experience. Because you truly do, when you marry someone, you want that person to be happy. And sometimes you end up trying to tailor who you are to fit versus getting to really know the other person and vice versa. I'm going to leave that one right there. I'm going to let y'all do what y'all need to do with that. So the next thing Jay talks about is attraction versus connection. Attraction versus connection. And I thought this was super interesting. He listed 5 things that you could be attracted to someone for. Physical, right? Their appearance, material, the things they have or accomplished. Intellectual, which is high on my list. I was actually just talking about this with my business partners a couple days ago. Emotional and spiritual. So I'll repeat those 5 things you could be attracted to someone for. Physical, material, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. If you can identify what attracts you to someone, whether it's physical, material, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, or a combination of all, then you can see if you are attracted to part of the person or all of the person. The top 3, physical, material, and intellectual, will lend itself to the chemistry that you have with a person, the chemistry you have with a person, but they don't correlate necessarily to a long-term bond in a relationship. And that's mentioning the physical, material, and intellectual attraction. But the last two, emotional and spiritual, will point to profound, lasting connection. They show the capability that you guys have to be lifelong partners. And I've never thought about that for as long as I've lived. Obviously, I've thought about, how I might be attracted to someone. Oh, he cute, he fine, all that. Oh, he's smart is normally where I lead to first. But a combination of all five, and or the main two being the last two, being the core of what can have a profound, lasting connection. Because we know looks fade, and you could have money today or tomorrow, it could be gone. So that really knocks out the first two. So you're really left with intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. I like to keep it intellectual on there. That's just my bias. Don't mind me. But those top three will be the chemistry and sometimes even the infatuation, but won't lend itself or correlate to a long-term bond or relationship. So I'm going to go ahead and let my business partners know I expect a Marco Polo for the after party after we've discussed this Think Like a Monk book. Put a pin in this in Marco Polo. I want to hear you guys' thoughts. This is the uncut off of social media conversation that we will have about that particular topic. And I see Alicia. Yep, make sure I want to hear from you guys tonight on just that topic tonight. So be sure to drop some Marco Polo messages. If you're still thinking about that time in the back of your mind that you expend, the energy you expend on relationships, he then mentions it. He mentions quality over quantity, which I'm sure you've heard. Quality over quantity. Presence and attention in your quality. And there's tons of distractions now that we can get caught up in. But your presence and attention and quality will ultimately lend to deeper connections. Then he talked about loving exchanges. This is where it kind of shifts gears and gives you some practical things to possibly think about doing. So he talks about loving exchanges and gives 3 buckets. And again, this is all based upon his time as a monk. I'm not using all the technical terms because half of them I can't say. I'd have to probably get some tutoring to be able to speak some of the verbiage that he used. But these loving exchanges, there's 3 of them. 1 is gifts, 2 is conversation, and the 3rd one is food. And altogether, there's 6 loving exchanges because you can give and receive both. So basically, each of these times 2 because you can give and receive. So obviously, you understand gifts. Some people, that's for them. They want to receive gifts. They want to give gifts as well. But that might not be for that person. But there may be small things that you can give by way of day that are not even gifts that you can give and receive to the person that you care about. Not just your significant other, but that could be your family members, that could be friends, you name it, your kids even. Conversation, give and receive actively. So being thoughtful about curating conversation. I've had this conversation a lot with my friends that have kids, especially younger kids, to develop that line of communication. So I've had that conversation so many times over the past year around how to start the foundation of good communication with your kid. It's been such an intriguing conversation, just kind of hearing some of their thoughts, some of the tactics that they're using to start an incredible communication with their kids at a young age. So understanding how to do that actively, how to give and receive and do that actively and very intentionally. Have conversation with the people that you care about. And then the 3rd one is food. And that one is described as anything that nourishes the body or the spirit. Anything that nourishes the body or the spirit, which obviously can be actual food, but that could also be, things of a physical nature. Look for what the other person needs more of as a way to give and then also communicate what you need. Nobody can read minds, he said. Be clear and be honest about what you need. Tell people what you want. Tell people what you want. So drop a little heart emoji. Y'all know if y'all were here last week, they got those new emojis for those that have them. The little hands with the heart shape. It's my new favorite emoji. If y'all know what that is on the keyboard, if this is adding value, if you've learned something or you're going to take anything away to reflect on, if it seems intriguing, if it seems like something you need to spend more time thinking about, just give me a little reaction. You can even give me a thumbs down if not, but I'd love to see a little bit more reaction. Next, he talked about this is what would make me feel more loved and appreciated versus you did this wrong. Oh, there go my heart emojis. Thank you for those heart emojis. So practice this phrase when you're thinking about being clear and honest about what you need. This is what I want. This is what would make me feel more loved and appreciated. Instead of telling someone that they're doing something wrong. Change your language. Right? Change your language. That was just one example of how to articulate the things that you desire, the things that you want. We can crush on someone. I thought this was really interesting. And I don't know who this is for. I love it when people say that. I don't know who this is for, but I'm going to say it, right? I don't know who this is for, but we can crush on someone to distract ourselves from our own personal suffering. We can crush on someone to distract ourselves from our own personal suffering. That's for all the singles out here. I know we got some married folks in here, but that's definitely for the singles. When we learn to love and understand ourselves and have compassion for ourselves, then we can truly love another person, which I firmly believe, me personally, that is true. Love is a verb. And I like to say love is an action verb. It truly is. Love is an action verb. And the last kind of points that I wanted to cover in this relationship chapter is around develop an awareness of who the person is through observation. He talked about how when he first met his wife, it was the first girl that he had dated since prior to being a monk. And he said he took her, he had kind of saved up a month's salary. I forgot what job he was doing at the time, but he had saved up a month's salary and took her to a movie and then this really, really, really high-end restaurant where he blew a bag probably, right? As we like to say, he probably blew a bag. And towards the end of the date, she looked at him and said, you really didn't have to do all of this. I would have been happy walking up and down the grocery aisles looking for some bread, right? And he really didn't get it in that moment. And he said if she hadn't really taken the time to allow him to understand that about her, then they probably wouldn't have made it, because he would have kept doing the thing that he used to do when he was dating, as well as the thing that he liked to do or wanted people to do for himself. So he had to take the time to develop an awareness of who the person was through observation, being his wife, and not be steered by external influence or even his own desires. He said, if you don't know what you want, you will send out the wrong signals and attract the wrong people. And I'm going to leave it at that. But that relationship chapter, I probably had another 15 points, but at that point, I'm really just reading the book to you, and I know you can do that yourself. But I wanted to share a little bit more in depth on that specific chapter because it really was an incredible chapter. And that leaves chapter 11, the service chapter, and then a conclusion that we'll cover next Thursday. And then I'll invite some folks to join me on Facebook Live, so you'll have the opportunity to request and share your thoughts on the book, what you learned, what you took away, what you've already implemented. Same thing on IG Live. Can't really do that on LinkedIn audio, but I can do it on Twitter Spaces, so we will next Thursday, 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time. I hope you all truly enjoyed the conversation. Me talking about it helped to reinforce points for me, so thank you. I appreciate you allowing me to share with you. It was truly an incredible experience. Thank you to everyone on Facebook. Thank you to Nikki, Candyce, and I see a few other people that joined. Thank you to Ivy444, Exuberance, John, Alicia, NC Coast Realtor, Exuberance, Clover Seed, and so many more on IG, as well as Richard and my guy, my brother, Ogden. Man, it's so freaking good. Even though you're just a little bubble, it's so freaking good to see you. I love you. Hug the family for me. And I can't wait to see you all soon. So excited to see you here tonight. I feel connected just even seeing your little bubble on LinkedIn audio. You all have a wonderful night. I'll see you next Thursday where we'll finish our last conversation around the Think Like a Monk book by Shetty. Again, if you haven't read it, it's cool. You can just come have a conversation with us. 7 o'clock next Thursday. And if you're not following the 5-Minute Career Hack, follow the 5-Minute Career Hack, whether that's on Facebook, IG, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Be sure to follow us. We'll have another book coming up soon. You don't want to miss it. I love you all. Have an incredible night. Be blessed. Be grateful, too.